Hi, everybody. Welcome to On Point Mentors, Ask a Mentor Group. Today we have Peri Shawn. She is an award-winning business author and was named one of the top 12 business books of the year, her book that she sold. She teaches and coaches VPs and their teams how to coach, increase sales, and improve the client experience. Peri is also a Master DiMartini facilitator. She's been with the Institute for 20 years, 25 years, something like that. And today she's going to be discussing with us, Growing Your Business is the Ultimate Personal Development Program. Now, before we go forward, On Point Mentors, if you haven't heard, if you are looking for a mentor to work with, whether it's with business or life issues, you go to onpointmentors.com and you can find a mentor all over the world. If you're looking to become a mentor, we urge you to take a look at our platform as well. We can get you up and running very quickly, and so you can get to coaching as quickly as possible. So Peri, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I am so excited you are here. I've known Peri now for several years, and yeah, we won't tell anybody. When we were just in the playground, right, Peri?
Yeah, very good.
And, I've always had a lot of respect for you, Peri, because you have a breadth of knowledge, not just in business, but also in the personal development side. So I thought when you came up with this topic, it was perfect because you could blend your two worlds. You're the master facilitator, so blend the two worlds and see how we can use it in our everyday life, both in work and at home. So why don't you tell us why you chose this topic, and let's take it from there.
All right. For me, I mean, as I've, over the years, 20 years of being in business, and I guess I would say before that, because I was a partner in a business before that as well. I originally started as a high school teacher, as you know. And as I went through that evolution and grew my business over time, how do I put it? I hit some roadblocks in my personal development, which caused me to continue. I'd hit a wall, then I, do my personal work, and then the next step, and it became really clear that growing a business is probably one of the most, one of the greatest opportunities for growth, because you very quickly, you have these measurables in your business. I mean, one of the simplest ones is, today someone was asking me about, how do you measure your business? Oh, one is financial, but the other way I measure my business, which some people may find it interesting, is the amount of gratitudes I get back after I send an invoice. And so I keep track of that because to me, with my corporate clients, that's what I'm looking for, because that's a demonstration that for me, that's part of my values. But as I've grown my business, I've been aware of, hitting these little ceilings, and how that's put me in a place to do my personal work. Also, it's been a great lesson in values, perception of values. And so for me, I thought it really is an ultimate playground for personal growth and development when you grow your business.
So go back to the values part. Can you explain that a little bit further for people who haven't gone? Yeah.
Okay. Values we all have our own personal set of highest priorities. And those are unique to each person. They're like a fingerprint. And so when we perceive that we're living in our highest values, we're in our most efficient and effective self. When we perceive that we're not living in our highest values, we will not be all that effective, productive, etc. And so to create a business, bringing it back to the business aspect, ideally for your business to be as effective as possible, you want your values to be expressed through your business, because otherwise you will the terminology of self-sabotage is what you typically will do. You'll engage in other activities that are aligned with your highest values, your things that are in your greatest priority, and not in others. And so part of it is also learning how how to delegate those things that are low in your values, things that you don't appreciate doing, and which is a great lesson as a leader too, to learn how to actually delegate along the way, and to delegate rather than with, I've just hired 2 people yesterday. And one of the things I keep on checking myself for is, am I infatuated that they're going to come and rescue me? Or am I going to provide them with the appropriate training so that they can do what they need to do? Because if I perceive that they're going to rescue me, I'm not going to provide them with the appropriate training and just magically hope that they're going to be able to do what their role is. So for me, then I build in the structure and those things. One way to know that something that you're, creating something or growing a part of your business that you have a fantasy with, or you have unrealistic expectations of, is that you don't have any structures in place for it. I remember when I was a kid, my mother would want all of us kids to be A students, but she wouldn't give us any time in which to do schoolwork. And so she didn't have the structure behind it. So it was definitely, magical thinking on her part.
I can imagine you were an A student, though.
It depended on the subject. But so for a business owner to be really clear about what parts of my business do I have that magical thinking in, if it's low on my values, which most likely that's where your magical thinking is, then you want to be putting in those structures. Like, for example, if they don't have money, most people think they have money on their highest values. But when I break it down with them and ask them more questions, they have not quite that as a high value, and they don't have the structures in place for it as to how they do it. Now, I'm also a believer in keeping it simple, because you don't want complex structures, but you do want structures.
Right. So personal growth or personal development and building your business. You're in sales. Well, you coach salespeople and corporations and sales. Yes. Sales is a difficult job, and it's very, I think it's confronting personally for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear, what's your strategy on helping salespeople sell their products, their programs, and ultimately themselves, and how we can do that with your personal development expertise and talents.
Great question, because when you look at sales, most people, let's take an entrepreneur, okay? Right. Because I think that's probably the better way to go, because I do teach entrepreneurs as well. And so when we look at this in the way people perceive sales is, and this is what I call the business growth paradox, is that entrepreneurs want their business to grow. Mm-hmm. Yet the one thing, typically, not always, but in many cases, for most people, they have an angst to some degree around selling. So the irony is, the paradox is that they love the idea of growing their business, but the thing that will allow their business to grow, they don't have a mastery of. Instead, they have all these emotional charges about it that come from their past. And so part of it is doing the personal work around that. But it's to look at it and say, all right, where is it that I've gotten this particular perception about sales? Is it connected to someone else when they sold something to me? Was it someone else in their family that had that experience, and then it has shared that with them, and they've just sort of piggybacked and borrowed that particular perception? Is it that they don't want to seem like they're the ones selling and trying to make money? Then it's a money charge. And so the thing for most business owners with this desire for their business to grow is to focus in on what are my charges around sales and selling, and what are my charges around money. When you look at it with those two perspectives, I keep an ongoing and sort of awareness of my charges in that regard. Okay. And then I'm continuing to work on them and doing my personal work with regards to them. And I'm amazed sometimes. I've recently been doing this stream of consciousness piece to, where's my next emotional charge in this regard, and just letting it go and to see what the answer is. And we have within us, no matter who I've worked with on these particular growing the business emotional charges, we all have them no matter what stage we are in our business. I've even had conversations with several billionaires, and they still have emotional charges in different ways, okay? Their charges are about people trying to manipulate them around money and take advantage of it, and then they've built all these structures in to protect themselves from anybody who they would invest or go into partnership with. But we all have them, and part of it is for us to continue to grow is to continually, because we'll reach a ceiling of finances within our business, and then try to work on that. And here's the neat part about it. We think we're the only one. Each person thinks, oh, I have this, challenge with trying to sell. And I have this issue around, it's holding me back. I don't want to sell, I don't want to sound pushy. I don't want to sound like a used car salesman. And by the way, in order to sell, there's a big difference between traditional sales is what most people think of when they think of sales. True selling is a different thing.
True sales, did you say?
Yes, true selling.
Okay.
So traditional selling is not what I would ever recommend that someone be doing. But true selling, that's a different thing. Okay.
Okay, define the two.
And define the two. All right. So traditional selling is where most of us are familiar with these techniques. You know that a salesperson's doing it to you. They use these old manipulative sales techniques, and they're, twisting arms to slam dunk a close. And then true sales is when you're looking to help someone with their buying decision. You recognize the neuroscience of how people make the decision to buy. We actually make it unconsciously first. And then the job of the person who's working with them to help them with that decision, because it's not about making everyone buy from you. It's not the case.
Right.
We're looking for who's a match. And then to help them with that decision. But here's the thing. The neuroscience proves to us that we have the decision made unconsciously. So part of the role of the person who's helping them with the decision, which would be the salesperson per se or the business owner, is to ask questions to find out where they are in their buying decision and then help them with that remainder part of their buying decision. And that's true sales. Now, there's two ways in which people can buy. And I think part of it for anyone who's in business is to recognize that they are living in two worlds when they're speaking with someone. The person could, very few sales happen from this place.
Right.
But an inspired place, that does happen sometimes, but that's rare.
Okay. The
place that it usually happens from is from an emotional place. Okay. In the amygdala of the brain. And so part of it is, and this is what I refer to as sales presence, that if the business person can get themselves to be present by doing their personal work, that's a reason why your business is a feedback mechanism to your personal work, right?
Okay.
And so it's great that as you're doing your personal work, if you haven't done enough personal work on sales and money, and you're with a client, then you're not able to be present to that person.
So,
And go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say, can you give some examples of, you said in the past people have emotional charges, right? What are like the top 5 emotional charges people have?
Well, here's a big, duality that happens inside people. I really want them to buy. I don't want to sound like a salesperson, or I don't want to, I don't want to, push you to become a client. And so there's this, push-pull kind of thing that goes on internally for people. And it all comes back to, who are you as an individual? Because the other element that most people forget is that you not only have your emotions going on internally, you have your client's emotions going on internally. And so if your emotions are going like crazy internally, you're not able to be present to the person you're speaking with. And if your role is to help them with that buying decision as they're having their emotional charges, they have this goal that they want, or something that they want to accomplish that includes their highest value, but they just don't have something that'll allow them to get there. So your highest values fit with their void over here. But if you're oscillating all over the place and you're having that conversation with them, you're going to be ineffective.
Right.
And so therefore, sales presence is what's the most important when you're having that conversation. Yeah.
Sales presence. Okay. So how did you get, I'm going to go back to your background now, because you were an educator.
Yes.
Which is why you are such a great coach, because you're a natural teacher, right?
Yeah, some would say that.
Absolutely. How did you even make the switch from being an educator to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I came from all my family history are all employees. Okay. And so here I am, a high school teacher. I was doing research on what causes students to perform better, meaning that I was what's called an action researcher, which means you're a teacher in the classroom like any other teacher, but you would think all teachers would do this. But and what you're doing is you're researching what causes the students to perform better and do better and excel on the tests and essays and things of that nature. And so as I was doing this research, the classes were doing really well. They gave me different types of classes. I was teaching some subjects I'd never taught before. And the class averages were 80%. And part of what I was integrating into it a little later, because that was when I was exposed to Dr. DeMartini, I started adding in values and using that in the work as well. And then I ended up teaching teachers. The government started to give me grants for my research because it got attention. I wrote a book, which was, I think it's still used in some universities. And I ended up teaching professors how to teach too. And I would be teaching at these large educational conferences. I also got some visibility because I was nominated for the Prime Minister's Award of Teaching Excellence.
Wow.
And so here I am at one of these big conferences and teaching them some of these principles that I was using in the classroom, primarily the use of questions to help the students do better. I mean, today we now know that that creates the neurological connections for them to build a neural network to perform better. But I didn't know that back then. I just knew that the questions worked. And because this was 25, 30 years ago. And so about 22 years ago, I one of these conferences where I was teaching, other teachers, and someone from the corporate world was in the audience, and he came up to me and he said, "You have no idea what you're sitting on. You should take this to corporate." And I went, no. Career educator, this was the life I perceived I was going to have until the day I died. And he said, "No, seriously, you really need to take this to corporate. And I continued to say no. He continued to push. I continued to say no. He finally won out. And so I was a single mom at the time. And so I said to him, I will do 1 day a week for 6 weeks. That's it. And then let's see what happens. The combination was I would train 1 week, the next week I would do some coaching, the week after I would train, and then and so on. Well, much to my surprise and to theirs, they doubled their sales. Yeah.
Wow.
I was teaching the salespeople, and I was teaching them all how to ask more effective questions, and the leadership, the management, and the exec. And so, long story short, over the following school year, I was coaching executives. I would have 3 different cell phones. Back then, the cell phones were quite large, and they didn't work so well. And so I'd have 3 cell phones, and I'd be coaching. It's a good thing I'm on the East Coast. I would be coaching executives in different parts of the country for that company. And it was a large corporation, which began a new career for 20 years from that point forward until recently. All the business was repeat and referral from there. Yeah. And thus began my career in corporate. And since then, integrating the neuroscience in a big way, working with 4 neuroscience grad students, combing through the research, piles and piles and piles of it, and being a dedicated student of the DeMartini Institute.
Right.
This is going to be my 26th DeMartini DeMartini method training program. So
wow.
Around the block a bit. So yeah. So I've been.
Tell me what you learned with, you had 4 grad students, you said, with the neuroscience research. What did you learn in that stack of research papers?
Stacks, and I still try to stay on top of it. Mind you, the amount of research that's coming out these days is huge. I'm particularly interested. I'm one of my highest values is a great conversation, and so I'm very interested in, and I consider a presentation a conversation too, because the individual experiences it as a one-on experience, even though it is one-to-many, they experience it as an individual. So the research that I focused in on, because there's so much out there, is what actually happens in someone's brain when they're buying, and how the most recent research shows that people make the decision unconsciously. They're not aware that they've made the decision, and so that when someone reaches out to someone, depending on how they come to someone as a client, they will have a certain percentage. The majority of the decision is made before they even have the conversation, which I think would help anybody out who's trying to sell, because you're not starting at 0 point, right. Unless you're doing cold calling. I don't recommend it at all. And that whole aspect is so important, and that a major component in the buying process is that we do it emotionally. Most people don't know that.
Really?
And that's the reason why, if you understand emotion, then you can be extremely masterful with sales.
So basically, making them believe, well, not making them believe, but leading them to believe.
No,
not even that.
Not even that.
Okay, put the words in my mouth.
You tap into where they are in their buying decision, and then you help them, because they already have in their mind certain things that they want to know.
Right.
So you work with that. So people buy on emotion, and then they justify it with the logic. So the neuroscience shows that we go to the emotional centers of the brain first, and then after we've made that decision emotionally, then our brain goes to the logical portions of the brain, which is like, if you think about it logically, you go, no, I'm a logical person. I sometimes work with scientists. I remember there's one group that I really love working with that I do repeat work with. It's a group of scientists who sell. And in the room, most of them have 3 PhDs. The person who's not doing so well has 2. And they are so, I mean, when we first met, first time, and we're in a session together, and they're like, no, it's logical. And they would argue so strongly with me that it's logical. And then I'd say, do you notice you're having a few emotions right now about it being logical? Anyway, so we have fun with it. But yeah, so those are the main components of the sales aspect. And part of it is learning how to tap into that. I call them, when we do our personal work, we do equilibrating questions. This is manifesting questions in order to help the person manifest what they would love. And also, if they're a match, what you would love for them to be a potential client.
So is it important for the person selling that they like the product that they're selling or the service that they're selling?
I'm not sure I would use the word like. I think I would use the word that it's high in their values. The words. Okay. Because if you're selling something that's not in your values, it's not going to, I mean, we all sell. That's the thing. I mean, even a little child, sells the parents on feeding them, sells them on, changing the diaper, or anybody who's been around children, they sell you on, play with me, or, if it's parents, buy me this. We all do it, and we all do it according to our highest values. So we will sell someone else on something so that we get what we would love that is in our highest values. And we do. When I got that, I went, we're doing it.
So would you recommend to someone who was working for a company, let's say, and they weren't really inspired by whatever the product is or the service is, to maybe look for another job? Or?
Well, I mean, we get into more detail in this one, but either link it to their highest values.
Okay, please explain that.
Oh, now we're going to get deep into the rabbit hole. So if these are your highest values, and this is the job that you're doing, make a list of the job, and then how does these things over here help you get your highest values? So we call that linking in the work. So you link your highest values or the job to your highest values is the simple way to put it. I'll just put it in a few words.
So what are you working on right now?
Oh, what am I not working on? I'm working on a book called, working title, Evolve, and about leadership and developing and growing other people. I am working on, until this year, I haven't done marketing. So this year I am now. I have done a book and things like that in the past, but I've not done any major marketing aspects. So doing that. And I'm loving what COVID has brought in this world. I know it's got its challenges as well, as we all know. I do a lot of executive coaching as well in my role. I typically do, when I say a lot, 2 full days a month. And that I'm very grateful because that gives me a really neat perspective because it's in the financial world, most of my coaching. I'm just trying to think, is there anyone who's not? No, most of them are in the financial world of different types, and so that's helpful for, I learn as I'm doing it as well as I love doing it. So it's great. And because it ranges from business to, it's a whole gamut. It goes full. direction. And I'm working on a bunch of projects that have really got me quite interested at this particular time, and I'm loving being part of On Point Mentors as well. So
Thank you.
yeah. So it's been a year of incredible growth so far, which I'm loving, and it's also, as I shared, the stream of consciousness writing that's been really, really neat. That has. And that's the personal stuff, but it impacts the business in a big way, because as I've done that, then there's more strategy and structure that I've been able to put in place. And that's the reason I hired 2 people yesterday, hired somebody last week, and I'm speaking with 2 people tomorrow. So we'll see how it all unfolds.
That's fabulous. Adding new people, new team members to your company. I mean, that has its challenges. Yes, we know.
Yes, definitely.
There's a lot of people in this group and other groups that we speak with who are coaches or want to be coaches and consultants. Some of them have been in the, in a corporate side of coaching. Some of them are just starting out trying to get certified. What's your advice to start a coaching business? But mainly, going back to the personal development part, is how do you prepare yourself personally so that you can go out and have a successful practice when you're starting out?
Okay, so there's multifacets to that.
There
are. Okay, so I'll go to the personal side that you mentioned or second. I think I can share some of what I did at the beginning for me.
Yeah.
I remember when I had my first executive coaching client, and it was for VP of the largest bank in Canada. And here I am going into the building, and I'm just feeling a little fluttering in the heart, right? And I'm thinking, okay, it's time to do some personal work right now. And for me to recognize when we ask ourselves questions, just like, for example, in that moment I said, who am I to do this?
Right.
And recognize that often the questions we ask, we have to change just a little bit in the way we say them, because instead of who am I to do this, who am I to do this? And I started doing my work as I'm, pressing the button on the elevator, and inside my head, right? All right, what have I done in order to prepare me for this moment? Because in this moment, because we do it to ourselves. That's what we do. And so by the time I got up, thank goodness the executive floor is on the top floor. And so by the time I got there, I had gotten myself to a spot where I was like, everything in my life up until this moment had just prepared me for this moment. There's not anything that I need to learn at this point, study or whatever, is just to be present in this moment, to be with this person. And the reality was my strengths, my highest values, were things that were low on this person's values. And so it made perfect sense that I was a match to help them get to where they wanted to go, because those particular things were holding them back. The ability to develop people, to have the conversations, to et cetera, et cetera. And so the other that I would suggest, which will require, it's a much deeper conversation, but do your personal work on the individuals that are your clients at the beginning. I would say that made a big difference dynamically for me, and I would recommend that it probably will make a difference. So in that regard, I would say do the DeMartini method on the client. And after that meeting, I went home did the DeMartini method.
Right.
And because it was a long-term relationship and I wanted to be masterful in that dynamic.
Right.
Which ended up being a 12-year relationship.
Wow.
As that individual grew and developed within the bank. And yeah, it was really neat. And the only reason why it ended is because they retired. So we still keep in touch to this day. So.
Wow. Okay, so people who don't know, this is not a pitch on DeMartini's work or anything, but we both love it. Because we see it's very effective and efficient. Mm-hmm. So when you say do the personal work on the person, can you just broadly kind of explain what that means?
Okay. So in order to do your personal work is do an inventory of your perceptions of the individual. And then bring that to, a balance so that you don't see them as being above you or below you, but you just are able to meet as peers, to be able to connect with one another, to be able to have that presence with one another without going, oh my gosh, this person is the VP of the largest bank. No, this person is a person, and then we're going to work together to help you get where you would love to go. And that's a different place. And that's what you want when you're working with your clients, because it's the presence that you have with your clients that will allow you to have the greatest impact, whether it be in a coaching dynamic or a teaching dynamic, same thing.
Right, because I know there are quite a few young coaches out there, and they are able to work with entrepreneurs and heads of corporations, right? And people sometimes say, well, what experience do you have, right, to be a consultant to a CEO? Well, maybe the CEO isn't looking for, business type of coaching. You need something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. So did you, when was the last time you did the advanced training for John DeMartini? Yeah.
Oh, the advanced training hasn't been offered for many years now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been some time since they've done the advanced training.
Because I always enjoy those because you really get deep into the deeper stuff. But I remember, you've known me for years, and I do not like to be in front of the camera, and I don't like to be.
Here we are. You're on camera, which I'm loving.
And I owe it to my business partner, Faye. She is the ultimate in dragging you kicking and screaming, whether you want to do it or not. She just said, sorry, Celia, you just have to do it. And and I mentioned it in our first interview, my very first live, that it being in front of the camera and interviewing and speaking and being the front person is not high on my values. But you're right, when we talk about the linking, and I said that's how I had to get myself or get enough courage to sit here. And is because I really, as On Point Mentors has been kind of a goal of mine for many years in bringing this coaching community together. And so I had to say, okay, how is it that, I want to create this amazing community? How is interviewing and being on camera going to get me there, right? So that was definitely something that I had to work on. And so I love the topic because, so many of us, especially now during COVID, are coming up with these ideas on, new businesses to create. My neighbor, who is recently divorced, all of a sudden her whole life has changed and she wants to create this coaching business. And she's like, well, I don't even know where to start. I don't know, who am I, right? So what else would you recommend? Like some practical steps for some of our newcomers, newbies in the coaching space?
In terms of steps, I mean, there's, the typical business stuff, but in terms of growing and selling, I I would find a partner to practice with in terms of selling and having those conversations. Don't practice on clients. It's not worth it. To, find individuals. So if you have no clients whatsoever, okay, none whatsoever, going at it cold and, knocking on people's doors, not necessarily. But look at the people who are in your network, and think of the individuals, because you may have to start off, and you want something that's going to grow.
Right.
And I know that the way I started was in the corporate world was a total fluke, but it worked out really well for me. And what I learned along the way is that if you start with something and then let it grow, and people will talk, then you have that opportunity. So the way I would do it, if I was starting anew again, and if I was a coach only, what I would do, I'm meaning only that because I do coaching and I do training as well, and then I do executive coaching. But so if I was coaching and looking to sell my coaching services, I would find maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 people, and a nominal fee or no fee, or just find something that feels like fair exchange. But choose the people carefully. People that, 1, can get great results. Okay. 2, who have a network in your ideal clients. Okay. So look at what circles do they travel in? What associations are they part of? Right. That kind of thing. And then offer that to those individuals. And then once they've gotten the great results from your work with the coaching, then you can be working on referrals from those individuals. And when you build your business based on referrals, our research is that people are typically, when I ask business audiences of thousands of people over the years, where they are in their buying decision when it comes to a referral, there's a process I walk them through. They say that they're at 100% of their buying decision complete. 80% of the room will say 100% of their buying is complete. Yeah. So that's the most effective and efficient way by which to grow the business. But it's how do you, what's the seeds that you plant? And so the seeds that you plant is finding those individuals who have relationships with your ideal clients who you can get great results for. And then it's from there.
Wow. So with what are some of the questions, the starter questions you might ask a client that you're just beginning to work with from scratch, that you don't know anything about them or?
Oh, well, it depends on what kind of coach you are, for one. In terms of, you mean in order to facilitate the coaching dynamic? Is that what you mean?
To understand what where their mind's at and what they need help with.
Okay. So for me, I would be asking them questions first to find out. I would look at their goals first. So I would ask some things about that. Yeah. But it also, the first question you ask in any conversation is key, is pivotal. So be really clear, because your questions are the GPS to your conversation, okay? Whether it's a sales conversation or the type of conversation we're talking about now, right, which is the coaching conversation. So to me, what I want to know is, what are the things that are most important to them, and what are the outcomes that they really want? So I might ask questions like, how would we know that this has been really, really successful for you? And then they'll say, oh, well, then this would happen, this would happen, this would happen, this happened. Well, now you've got your checklist of what you're working towards, right? Because if you don't have that, then, and notice, that's the high. Now we got to look at, okay, what's in the way of that? So you're going from, one end to the other. Oh, well, I've got this going on and that going on and that going on. All right. And which one of those do you perceive as the biggest issue? I think that first one. How come? Well, and then they'll go on and on and on about that story, which will give you the content for you by which to, figure out what's the most important thing to be working on.
That's really good advice. I got to remember that one. That number one question, the important question. So during COVID, what are some of the challenges you're seeing in corporations, and how are they able to, personally and as a corporation, how are you able to assist them?
Wow. Now that's a big question.
Yeah, I know.
And the reason why I say that is it would depend on which week.
Yeah.
The first couple of weeks, I have not ever seen executives making decisions as fast as they ever had to. My business during that time, in my business, I have, some back-end things that need to be done, and then I have client-facing things. Most of the time, I like to spend most of my time with client-facing things, which is teaching and coaching. I have not ever had this before, but from the moment I woke up 6:30 in the morning, have my shower, get ready, to the moment I went to bed, 11 o'clock, 12, I was with clients the first few weeks, including the weekends. I had not ever had, the weekends I usually reserve for my entrepreneurial clients. During this time period, the corporate clients we were having conversations and doing things on the weekends as well. A lot of it was strategy. How do we do this? How do we deal with that? I was also, in the midst of it all, giving mini presentations. I designed in that, and because all the questions that were coming to me were the same kind of questions from executives, I spent, and this is part of my non-client time, I designed 3 presentations during that time frame as fast as I could. 2 were for teams, and 1 was for executives, and it was about, what did I call it? It was the 3 phases of pandemic leadership. And
wow.
Yeah, and because I was getting so many questions and I couldn't respond to them all in an appropriate, fast enough time. So I created the simplest PowerPoint in the world, and I did a webinar and could see who was on, and we had some major players, including CEOs of some major corporations who had joined it. It became part of what was used in the intranet, and not internet, but intranet. That means the internal intranet of the corporations. Some of the CEOs, because I included language that you can use to communicate with people under stressful times. Some CEOs were borrowing that language and using it to communicate with their clients. We had over 22,000 people because we put it on a site.
Right.
And we had over 22,000 people go to that site to watch the video. I did it without getting their emails because I wanted it to be a give back to the corporate community. So that the first few weeks were crazy. I had people who were trying to get a hold of me during that time period and sending me messages. There was nothing I could do. It was just, my family, throw food under the door, that's all there was. So the corporate world at that point was extremely busy, high speed, really quick decisions. My coaching conversations were short, sweet, tight, on to the next.
Right.
Things shifting minute to minute. It was crazy. So I would say the highest priority at that point was really getting people, it was a lot of high-speed decision-making, high-speed coaching, speed coaching, speed training to train the teams on how to sell virtually that have never sold virtually before. And then from there, it's been, navigating and adjusting each week depending on what's going on in the environment and what country they're from, because I coach people in different countries. And so it's been an interesting navigation, per se. A big shift of, resiliency, mental wellness, mental health. I've ended up doing presentations on that topic, sort of integrating the business and the personal work that I do, using the DeMartini method. And being hired to do webinars, to go into social media for different clients to help their people who they serve be able to, be able to navigate what's going on and how to manage it. And full range. I mean, I had one client who, she serves a lot of families. And so she said, I want you to come in, talk about the DeMartini method, talk about business, and at the same time, I want you to talk about how to educate your children at home. Use your teacher stuff. And it's like, oh, wow, I've never had, all of it so in one, presentation or one webinar.
In one webinar, you did those topics.
Yeah. And it was like, it was the most interesting time of, I still, even now, coaching some people, you see children walking around in the background or, that kind of thing. So it's a very different dynamic. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What are some of the top emotions you've had to deal with during this time from your clients?
How do I put it? I can't say specifically because I'm under, confidentiality agreements.
Right.
But let's suffice it to say that COVID has cursed people with, the neuroscience shows us that emotions compound, okay? Meaning that, the emotion that you're experiencing in this moment is not just the emotion of this moment, it's another moment from the past that's connected to that moment emotionally, and another moment and another moment. So there's a compounding effect.
Right.
And so COVID has raised emotional charges of things that people have not dealt with from their past and that they weren't even consciously aware of. And so as leadership, it's been an interesting dynamic to sort of go, oh, that's what's causing the racing heart. That's what's causing me to just stare at a computer screen and not be able to do anything. Yeah, that's what it is. It's because of your perception of not only this moment, but that moment and that moment and that moment too. And, let's unravel those for you. So it's been, and also strategy. Strategy has been a big thing because I would say, with my experience and what I do, and even with the kind of presentations I've been asked to do, it's a agile strategy. This is the strategy that we have this week, and next week when we get new information, we might shift our strategy somewhat. So many people that I work with have, and different organizations that have asked me to do different types of training. It's like, we don't have any goals now for 2020. We don't put the goals out till 2021. We're just going to deal with what's going on in this moment. All that business presence, So it's been a different dynamic than I've ever seen before. I've been through, 9/11, 2008, SARS, other things that have been major events. But this being a combination of both health and financial,
right.
It's been a different world. So,
yeah. So what would be your number one advice? We'll end on this. What would be your number one advice to give people out there, based on your expertise, what they can do right now to help keep them balanced and strong through this period?
Oh, with regards to growing their business? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I would put it in this context. Though this period is different than any that we've experienced before, it still has the same elements. And what I mean by that is some people are concerned about things. Go back just like this to the past moments where you've had an experience like this before. Because just like anything else, we'll come through this, no problem. And some people, their businesses have been busier than ever. I mean, I know my coaching business has been busier than ever. My speaking business, it's been different. That's for sure. It's been different. But I'm still loving it. And here's the part that I think is really helpful for everybody to keep in mind, is that we think quite often that I was sharing this at the beginning of COVID when it first happened and all the financial stuff that was going on, is that whenever we have a recession, we think, the typical recession is 1, 2, 3%. 2008, I think it was 5% drop in the economy. We focus in on the stock market, which is not the true measure of the economy. Instead, to recognize that what happens is, we'll have it. So 2008 was a major recession. So even if this period ends up being a major drop, okay, we often focus in on the drop, that whatever that percentage is, rather than there's still, in the case of 2008, there's still 95% of the money still circulating in the economy.
Right.
Too many people think, when I ask people, how much do you think the economy drops during a recession? And most people who are not major, not my corporate clients who are in the financial world, will say things like, 30%, 50%. It's a lot smaller than we actually think it is.
Yeah.
And so there's still the rest of that money out there, and there's still people spending. It's just like if you had to cut back your budget per se by 5%, you would still be spending money. It's just you'd be spending it in a slightly different way. Right. So part of it is, what is that slightly different way for your clients that you serve? That's all.
Right. Yeah. And your long-term vision for yourself and your company?
Oh, you're asking a big question.
You keep saying that.
I mean, we could spend a day on that you're bringing up. They're great questions. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're big questions. We need more time. Vision for my company. How do we put it? It's to help a lot of people to manifest the businesses that they would love, and to do it authentically and profitably, and without compromising their values, and to help others. I'm starting to train others to do what I do, and I'm loving how that's unfolding. It's beautiful, and I didn't mention that. That's one of my projects, so I'm grateful for that evolution. And with over 100 products of different sorts, there's a lot to share. So.
Fabulous. Well, we hope we can share some of that here at On Point Mentors, because we know you have a wealth of information, both nicely packaged in online programs, webinars, in your talks and your speeches, once we can get out and do it publicly. But Peri, thank you so much for being here. I always love how deep you can go and how you look at the compounding effects of things, and which is what makes you such a great coach, is you're able to find the layers and knock them off so that someone can move forward. companies can move forward. So I thank you so much for sharing your information with us.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll come back. And I'm hoping to get a group of our On Point mentors together to have kind of like panel discussions and talk about some fun and maybe not so fun topics, but some interesting ones, to say the least.
That'll be awesome. I love the interesting topic.
Great. Thanks, Peri. Great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Okay.